You probably heard by now about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse and the Signature Bank collapse in New York. But for the purposes of this segment, we're focusing on the Silicon Valley Bank failure. And the FDIC now has taken control of the Silicon Valley Bank, getting things stabilized, going through that process. And I will say, as a side note, the Biden administration's response to all this, I think, has been pretty good because there's a lot of uncertainty in a moment when a really big bank collapses. And I think it's been getting handled pretty good. But what I want to talk about here is the Republican right-wing response to this. And you'll never guess what they're blaming for this bank failure. Woke. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like nails. So I'm going to give you some examples of this. It actually had to do with their investment decisions and economic factors that were impacting them. But the woke monster strikes again in the eyes of Republicans. Take a look at James Comer first.
They were a woke bank. If you look at the...
Here, let me start this over, and then we'll discuss a little bit more of the absurdity of this.
They were a woke bank. If you look at their director of risk management, she brags about their diversified ESG portfolio. And the problem is that a lot of this is fantasy land. It's like the Green New Deal. It doesn't work. It doesn't pencil out. And if you're a bank being insured by the federal government, which is the FDIC, your responsibility is to grant loans to people who can actually pay them.
Okay, let me give you a few more examples here.
But that's not the end of the story. In some ways, it's the beginning. So here's the part where you pause and ask yourself a question that too few seem to be considering right now. They're doing this. What are they going to get in return? Oh, something for sure. Remember that after 2008, the Obama administration, Eric Holder, swooped in and imposed DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards on the entire financial sector. And that's one of the main reasons our big banks are now increasingly incompetent, and also one of the reasons Americans are so divided by race. Ideologues used the 2008 bank bailout to kill American meritocracy. That's
Okay, so you can find countless examples of this being the talking point. For the purposes of time, I'll stop there with Tucker and let Biden actually lay out, when he was addressing the bank collapse, what actually is to blame here. What actually should be the conversation in regard to this situation.
During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place tough requirements on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, including the Dodd-Frank law to make sure that the crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again. Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements. I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again.
So once again, we're in this situation, a similar conversation we had about East Palestine, where the right will explode saying it's Biden and the wokesters, diversity, equity, inclusion, all these different things. That's what caused this. And then you dive into the facts, you dive into the specifics, and it's actually stuff like this.
That's why in the first 100 days, I have taken action to roll back burdensome regulations that undermine community banks, especially, I know you're going to be very disappointed at this, Dodd-Frank, right? No, it's out of control. And by the way, not only for community banks, for banks, period. We could take community out of that one, right? Now, Dodd-Frank, we're working on that right now, and you'll see a very big difference because you want to get out and make our country work.
So instead of creating this this mythical creature, wokeness, and obsessing over that in every situation and applying that to everything you possibly can and getting nowhere with it, I would suggest some of those on the right use this as an opportunity to turn around and think and have a conversation with your own side, with your own set of individuals that believe and buy into your ideology. Is it really the way we want to go? Is it really the ideology we want to push that is constantly saying deregulation is the best policy. Let the free market always do its thing. Don't intervene. Because in East Palestine, we see that regulations are necessary to make sure train derailments don't happen like that. Forcing companies to have proper safety protocols is how we prevent situations like that. With this, Dodd-Frank and other regulations, that's how we make sure bank collapses don't happen like this. That's how we make sure we have a more stable economic situation as a whole. And for the purposes of short-term profit or just an ideological slant, so often conservatives push the direction of roll back the regulations. They're burdensome, they're unnecessary, and then we're in a place, whether in multiple different industries, but since we're talking about banking, where it's less stable and it's less structured in a way that prevents situations like the one we're dealing with now. And so it could not be more the opposite of what is being talked about within these circles, and it's pretty wild to watch. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.